Vale.
Bona nit a tots, buenas noches. Vamos a empezar la rueda de prensa de Gary Neville con las primeras preguntas. Ahora vamos por ahí, vamos a empezar por ahí. Sí.
Hola, Frank White de la cadena SER. ¿Podría explicar la secuencia del cambio de Negredo? Ha dado la impresión, a nivel externo vaya, que saca a Negredo y no a Abdenur porque se lo pide la gente. Ha sido así, gracias.
No, not at all. I didn't know Santos had been sent off initially. Alvaro was already coming on. So Alvaro was coming on initially. And then Alvaro actually told me that Santos was coming off, that he'd been sent off. So I then turned around to the bench and said to I'm Abdenur, get changed, you're coming on. And Alvaro went and sat down. And then my coaching staff called me back to the bench and said, why don't we gamble and go for 3 at the back with João Cancelo, Mustafi and Sakiri. We decided to gamble and we changed our mind again. I think because of the confusion, we were making the substitution of Alvaro initially. I changed the mind, thinking that we needed to bring a centre-back on. And then we went back to the decision because the coaching staff called me back to the bench and we drew out how we could play and we went for a different system, but it definitely wasn't the fans. From my point of view, maybe sticking with the initial substitution might have been right. Apologies, I've lost my voice, by the way.
Hola, Julián Burgos de Asgari. Mi pregunta es, ¿por qué no ha jugado Parejo y luego en la segunda parte, cuando se lesiona Enzo Pérez, no das entrada a Parejo y sí a Danilo? Y ya de paso, ¿qué es lo que tiene Enzo y Cherisev?
We had a theory on this game that we had all week about how we were going to play in this game. And we always wanted 2 more positional midfield players out of the 3 in midfield. And because Andre Gomes releases himself to go forward, we had Javi Fuego. And the decision was always to try and play Enzo and 1 more positional type midfield player who was more of a defensive mind. I spoke to Danny about this morning and said that was the thinking behind the game. And I think the plan worked. I think for 70 minutes the plan worked, and then we conceded again from a set piece. And I said to you last week after the Bilbao game that we keep hurting ourselves by conceding goals from corners, and we've done it again today, and it's something that changed the flow of the game completely. And that's, in my mind, the big moment in the game, the second goal going in. But in terms of Danny, it was nothing to do with what happened here last week. It was purely a strategy against a team that have a very strong, compact midfield, and we wanted to play 2 more defensive players out of the 3 in midfield, and that was the strategy that we adopted at the start of the game, and it was the strategy that we adopted after the half-time change that we had to make with Enzo. And sorry, Denis Cheryshev had a muscle injury, so we had to take him off. Denis had to come off. I wouldn't have obviously substituted Denis Cheryshev if he hadn't had an injury. He came off at half-time, yes, with a problem.
Gary, you seem to take a little bit longer tonight to come out and see us. Is this a harder defeat to take than some of the others? And also, just on the goal, is it the player that's the wrong side of Torres that should take the blame, or is it the player who's playing, I think it's Cancelo that's playing Torres on side, who's not next to him, but he's...
The reason I came, I asked Damir 5 minutes before, can I go and do the press? And he said, no, Simeone's still doing the press conference, so I just came out as quickly as Damir told me.
It was our mistake because we thought that Simeone is still here, and then it's nothing planned.
I would actually come out before the away coach if I could. From my point of view, the goal, I will never blame individuals for a goal. I need to look at it back properly and see what happened. You've obviously looked at it on the different replays. I've not had an opportunity to look at it. I obviously know we've conceded from a corner. But it's not an individual problem, it's a collective problem. We have to work harder on these things because I thought the first 25 minutes we didn't play well in the game. I thought actually the last 20 minutes of the first half we played well. I thought we responded a lot better. We started to play properly and get in behind them, caused them some problems. I thought the first 25 minutes of the second half was even. They had a big chance where Diego made a great save, but we looked dangerous. But then obviously goals changed the game, obviously losing the 2-1. The things that went against us tonight, I suppose, from our point of view were losing Santos, obviously, conceding the set piece, and obviously the 2 injuries that we picked up, having to force the substitutions when, obviously, in a game like this, you want things to go for you in that point of view. It didn't quite go for us tonight, but we lose. I am disappointed. It's probably the most disappointed I've been after a game because I felt as though last week, after 70 minutes, we were in the game against Bilbao. This week, after 70 minutes, we're in the game against Madrid. And in the last 20 minutes, the game's gone away from us. And I'm disappointed because I don't like repeat mistakes in terms of, exactly the same as last week. And I feel as though, obviously, from my point of view, and I'm looking at myself and obviously everybody, that it feels a little bit like last week. And I don't like repeats. So that's why I'm disappointed tonight, because I felt we could have got something out of the game.
Hola Gary, buenas noches, Juan Carlos Alarcón de Plaza Deportiva. Los continuos fallos que comete el equipo a balón parado, que le cuestan goles importantes como hoy, como la semana pasada, ¿son fallos de concentración de los futbolistas que no están al 100% implicados en esas jugadas o es que falta trabajo en ese aspecto?
No, I thought against Malaga on Wednesday night we were absolutely outstanding. Those of you who were at the game or saw the game, we defended set pieces and the long ball into the box very well. But tonight, obviously, it's just slipped away from us again and we've conceded one from a set piece. So it changes the game. Once Madrid went in front, we then lost, obviously, a player to a red card within, I think, 5-6 minutes. And the game then turned on its head completely. And we were chasing the game then. And I think, regarding the last substitution, you're in that situation where do you go for it and you play more attacking and hope that you can get back in the game, or do you try and play 4-4-1-1 and wait for that one moment? I think that's a 50-50 call that we had, and that's something that I'll have to look at tomorrow.
Aquí Mr. Dani Meroño en directo para Radio Sport y Deportes con Julio Insa. Quería preguntarle, porque siempre dice que al equipo le va bien durante los 70 primeros minutos de partido y que a partir del minuto 70 pasa algo siempre y se desconecta o le va mal y acaba perdiendo o empatando. Yo quería preguntarle si es que no está bien físicamente o que los futbolistas mentalmente a partir del minuto 70, si no ven que han resuelto el partido, se desconectan. Quería preguntarle exactamente cuál cree usted que es el motivo, si físicamente o es algo más mental.
No, I'm not always saying that. I mean, that's wrong, I think, to say that. I think that I've said it in the last 2 weeks, in the last 2 games at home, Bilbao and today. But in fact, I was saying very much the contrary on Wednesday night against Malaga. I was saying that in the last half an hour, we were fantastic. We were resilient, we were strong, we stood up to a barrage of attacks, and that we were actually very focused, concentrated, and didn't concede a goal. So I think it's wrong to suggest that I'm saying this every week. I mean, I've said it last week and this week, and that's why I'm being open with you and honest and saying that's why I'm disappointed tonight. That it felt like last week and this week the games turned at the same moment. But it's not a mentality problem or a fitness problem. I think today we just lost 2 players through having problems that was nothing to do with fitness. They're very fit players, so I don't think that's the case.
Hola Gary, buenas noches. Soy Shukur Muhammad de Kurdistan 24. Después de segunda parte es casi 15 minutos, es equipo muy bueno, pero después de 15 minutos ya está el perdido control de la liga. Gracias.
I think I've just said that. I think it was longer than 15 minutes. Sometimes you have to watch the game back to get the exact moment, but I thought the second half we played well. Up until obviously the goal going in, I think that changed the course of the game. And I think these games are always decided by moments that go against you or for you. And I think that obviously the moment went against us tonight. We conceded a goal, and then obviously from there the game became difficult because you felt as though obviously, particularly when we went down to 10 men, it was near on impossible for us to get back into the game. But no, I think for 25 minutes in the second half, we played well and it was an even game. Look, we're playing against one of the best teams in Europe tonight, by the way. We need to remember that. And we've, for 70 minutes, have probably given them one of the hardest games they've had. You know, they won in the Bernabeu last week. And I think that if you ask Simeone, I don't know what he said in his press conference, but I think he will have said that for 70 minutes it was a very difficult game, and then the second goal and the sending off changed the game. I think that would be my assessment of it. I don't know what he said.
Okay.
Any more? No? That's